It is 2 in the morning, and the man is awake again. Not from a noise, not from a dream, from his bladder, which is full, insistently full, the way it is most nights at roughly this hour. He gets up, crosses the cold floor, and stands there in the dark, wondering how this keeps happening. He stopped drinking after dinner. He went to the bathroom right before bed. And still, a few hours later, the bladder is full enough to wake him, night after night, at nearly the same time. He has a story for it. The prostate, probably. Or just what happens to a man who has crossed 60. And some of that may be true. But none of it explains the timing. Why the bladder fills not at midnight, not at dawn, but in that same narrow window in the middle of the night, with a regularity you could almost set a clock by. Here is the part that sounds wrong and is exactly right. The urine that woke him was not made from the water he drank at dinner. Most of that was gone hours ago. The bladder filled, in the dead of night, from fluid that had spent the entire day sitting in his legs, pooled in the tissues of his calves and ankles by gravity, waiting. The moment he lay down, that fluid began a journey. Out of the legs, back into the blood, up to the heart, and into the kidneys, which turned it into urine on a delay of a few hours. The 2 in the morning is not random. It is the arrival time. The body is settling the day's fluid accounts, and it scheduled the payment for the middle of his sleep. To see why it happens then, follow the fluid backward through the night, one link at a time. Start with the day, when the man is upright. Standing and sitting, the whole column of blood below the heart sits under the weight of gravity, and the pressure in the veins and capillaries of the legs runs high. At that pressure, a little fluid is constantly pushed out of the capillaries into the surrounding tissue. The same filtration that happens everywhere in the body, but exaggerated in the legs because the pressure there is highest. In a body that is moving, the calf muscles squeeze the veins and pump that blood and fluid back up, and the legs stay clear. In a body that sits still for hours, the pump is idle, and the fluid quietly accumulates in the tissues of the lower legs. By evening, there may be several hundred milliliters of it parked in the calves and ankles, often enough to leave that familiar pressed line at the top of a sock. It is not going anywhere. Gravity is holding it down. Fact card title, Dries being precise about why the legs in particular, because it is gravity doing simple arithmetic. Pressure in a column of fluid rises with the height of the column above it, and when you stand, the veins in your ankles sit at the bottom of a tall column of blood running all the way up to the heart. The pressure down there can be several times what it is at heart level. At the capillaries, where the thin walls let water seep in and out, that high pressure tips the balance outward. More fluid is pushed into the tissue than is drawn back. Everywhere else in an upright body, the columns are shorter and the balance holds, but the feet and ankles sit at the far end of the longest column in the body, so that is where the surplus collects. The longer the hours upright and still, the more it adds up, which is why the swelling is an evening event, not a morning one. Then the man lies down. The instant his legs come level with his heart, gravity stops holding that fluid in the legs. The high pressure that kept it pooled is gone, and the fluid begins to drain back out of the leg tissues, into the veins, and toward the center of the body. Over the first hours of lying down, that parked fluid re-enters the circulation, and the volume of blood returning to the heart rises. Now the chain reaches the heart, and this is the link most people have never heard of. The upper chambers of the heart, the atria, are stretch detectors. When the extra blood volume arrives and stretches the atrial walls, the heart does something that surprises people who think of it only as a pump. It acts as a gland. In 1981, the researcher Adolfo de Bold showed that the stretched atrium releases a hormone, now called atrial natriuretic peptide. The name says what it does: natriuretic, salt losing. The hormone travels to the kidneys and tells them, in effect, there is too much volume on board, shed salt and water. The kidneys obey. They increase the amount of urine they produce. So the fluid that spent the day in the legs becomes, a few hours after lying down, urine in the bladder. Atrial stretch releases ANP, de Bold, 1981, from =0 to =1. Prefix equals pos equals upper third, dur equals 4 seconds. There is one more system that should be fighting this, and its job explains the timing too. At night, the body normally releases more of a hormone called vasopressin, or antidiuretic hormone, whose role is to concentrate the urine and hold water back so the bladder fills slowly while you sleep. In a young, healthy body, that nighttime vasopressin surge keeps night urine low, and the redistributed leg fluid is handled quietly. The 2 in the morning waking happens when the volume signal from the redistributed fluid overwhelms the water-holding signal, when there is simply more fluid arriving than the kidney is being told to keep. The clock reads 2 because that is how long it takes. An hour or 2 to redistribute the fluid, another hour for the kidneys to process the volume into urine, and the bladder reaches its waking threshold in the middle of the night. It helps to hold the shape of the whole chain in one line, because every link is borrowed from a system doing its ordinary job. Gravity files fluid into the legs by day. Lying down releases it. The returning volume stretches the atria. The stretched atria signal the kidneys to shed salt and water. The kidneys make urine. The bladder fills. Not one of those steps is a malfunction. Each is a correct response to the step before it. The only thing out of place is the timing, that the whole sequence runs while you are asleep, on a delay set by the hour you went to bed. Change nothing about the body and only change when the fluid is allowed to move, and you move the entire chain to a different time of day. That is the lever the whole video turns on, and it sits in the legs, hours before the bladder ever fills. Set 2 versions of the same evening side by side, because the difference between waking at 2 and sleeping through is decided long before bedtime. It is decided by the day. In the first version, the man spent the day moving. He walked between rooms, stood to do things, took the stairs, shifted and rose through the hours. Every one of those movements fired the calf muscles, and the calf is the pump that drives leg fluid back up against gravity. The filtered fluid never got the chance to park. It was returned to the circulation as fast as it formed, carried to the kidneys, and passed as urine during the day, while he was awake and on his feet. By bedtime, his legs are empty of any surplus. There is nothing parked in them to redistribute. He lies down, and the night stays quiet, because the day already settled its own accounts. In the second version, the man spent the day seated, a long drive, a desk, an afternoon that became an evening in the same chair. The blood pump never stopped delivering fluid into the legs, but the muscle pump that clears it sat idle for hours. So the fluid accumulated, exactly as the physics says it must, and by evening, several hundred milliliters of it are banked in the lower legs. He lies down at 11 feeling fine, but the moment he is horizontal, the banked fluid begins to move, the atria stretch, the salt-losing hormone goes out, the kidneys ramp up, and at 2 in the morning, the bill comes due. Night urine load, active day, 1_ value equals 30, 2_ label equals seated day, 2_ value equals 100, POS equals center, dur equals 5 seconds. Notice what is not different between the 2 evenings. Both men drank the same amount and stopped at the same time. Both emptied the bladder before bed. Both went to sleep with the same intention. If you measured only what went into the mouth, the 2 nights should be identical. And that is exactly why cutting the evening glass of water so often fails to fix the problem. The water in the glass was never the main source. The main source was the fluid already inside the body, filtered out of the blood over a long day and stored in the legs, waiting for the posture that would set it free. You cannot drink your way out of a debt that was paid in advance by gravity. It is the same body and the same fluid in both versions. The only variable is whether that fluid was cleared during the day, on its feet, or banked in the legs to be processed lying down. The day's stillness is alone, and the night is when it is collected. Move the fluid while you are upright, and the kidney passes it while you are awake. Sit on it all day, and you have simply scheduled the same fluid to be passed at 2 in the morning, through a bladder that has no choice but to wake you to do it. For a young body, All of this is usually invisible. The redistributed fluid is modest, the nighttime water-holding hormone is strong, and the kidney concentrates the night urine enough that nothing wakes you. After about 50, three things shift at once, and together they turn a quiet process into the thing that defines a night's sleep. The first is more pooling. With age, the calf muscle shrinks, the veins lose some of their tone, and the valves in the leg veins that should keep blood moving upward grow less competent. More fluid filters into the leg tissues during the day, and less of it is pumped back out. So there is more parked fluid waiting to be redistributed the moment the body lies down. The second is the lost night signal. The nighttime surge of vasopressin, the hormone that should concentrate the urine and hold water back while you sleep, flattens with age. Researchers studying nocturia in older adults, among them the Swedish physician Kjell Asplund, found that the normal circadian rhythm of this hormone, high at night and low by day, fades, so that the kidney is no longer told to slow down after dark. The one system built to keep the night quiet goes quiet itself. After 50, more leg pooling plus weaker night vasopressin. The third is the kidney itself. The aging kidney loses some of its power to concentrate urine, so the same amount of salt and water to be excreted now comes packaged in a larger volume of urine. More volume, made through the night, with no hormone telling it to stop. It is a compounding problem, more fluid arriving from the legs, a weaker signal to hold it back, and a kidney that needs more water to flush the same load. Each one alone might pass unnoticed. Together, they guarantee a full bladder before dawn. This is why the pattern is so reliable in later life and so easy to misread. Surveys of older adults find that waking at least once a night to urinate is the rule rather than the exception past the age of 60, and that it climbs steadily with each decade after. It gets blamed on the bladder, on the prostate, on a small capacity, and sometimes those play a part. But the volume of urine being produced overnight is, in a large share of cases, simply too high, and no bladder of any size would sleep through it. The bladder is the messenger. The message was written hours earlier, in the legs and the kidneys. By the redistribution the body cannot help performing the moment you lie flat. Put the three together, and the result is nearly universal. Most people past 60 wake at least once a night to urinate, and many blame the bladder or the prostate when the bladder is only the last link in a chain that began in the legs that afternoon. And it is not a harmless nuisance. Getting up disoriented in the dark, half asleep, is one of the most common settings for a fall, and a fall after 70 is a serious event. The 2 in the morning waking is worth understanding not because broken sleep is annoying, though it is, but because the walk to the bathroom in the dark is where a fragile night turns dangerous. If the 2 in the morning waking is the body redistributing parked leg fluid while you sleep, then the fix follows exactly from the mechanism. You cannot stop the redistribution. Lie down and the fluid will move. What you can do is move it earlier, on purpose, while you are still awake, so the kidney passes it before you are in bed instead of at 2 in the morning. Here is how, and why each part works. The central move is to lie down before you mean to sleep. In the early evening, ideally 3 to 4 hours before bed, lie flat with your legs raised, propped on a couple of cushions so the ankles sit above the level of the heart, and stay there for 30 to 60 minutes. Read, or let a show run. What is happening while you rest is the entire 2 in the morning process. Run forward deliberately. With the legs up and level, the day's pooled fluid drains out of them and back into the circulation. The atria stretch, the kidneys make their urine. And because it is 8 in the evening and you are awake, you simply get up and pass it. You have made the night's redistribution happen in the early evening. By the time you actually go to bed, the legs are already empty. There is little left to redistribute, and the volume signal that would have woken you at 2 has already been answered. Evening legs up window, hours before bed. A few practical details make the difference between this working and not. The timing matters more than the duration. The window has to be early enough in the evening that there is time to make and pass the urine and still be done well before you actually lie down for the night. 3 to 4 hours ahead. not 30 minutes. The legs genuinely have to be raised above the level of the heart, not merely stretched out on a footstool, because it is the height that reverses the gravity that parked the fluid. A cushion or two under the calves is enough. And expect it to work in stages. The first evening you may simply pass more urine before bed and notice one fewer waking. Over a week of doing it, the body finds a steadier rhythm, and the deep night waking can fade. It is not a trick that works once. It is a schedule the body settles into. Then prevent as much of the pooling as you can in the first place. Through the day, do not sit for more than about 30 to 60 minutes without standing and walking, even a short loop. The calf pump returns the fluid before it can bank, so there is less to deal with at any point. If the pooling is heavy, graduated compression stockings worn during the day press the leg tissues and blunt the accumulation, which is why they are a standard recommendation for exactly this problem. And keep the late hours light on salt and on large volumes of fluid, because salt holds water in the body, and a heavy late drink simply adds to the volume that has to be passed overnight. One honest caveat belongs here, because fluid physics is not the only thing that fills a bladder at night. If the waking is new and sudden, if it comes with real swelling that pits and stays when you press it, with breathlessness lying flat, with a great and constant thirst, or with pain, then the cause may not be the simple gravity and posture story this video tells. It may be the heart, the kidneys, the blood sugar, or in men, the prostate. And that is a conversation for a doctor, not a cushion under the legs. The redistribution mechanism is the common benign reason a still day turns into a broken night, and the legs up window is a reasonable thing to try for it. It is not a reason to ignore a body that is signaling something louder. That is the whole protocol, and notice what it is not. It is not a drug, and it is not drinking less to the point of going to bed thirsty, which has its own risks. It is timing. The legs up evening window is the key, because it is the one move that takes the exact process that wakes you at 2 and slides it 3 or 4 hours earlier into the waking evening, where a full bladder is a 30-second interruption instead of a broken night. The relief can come the very first night. Keep it up and the body learns a new schedule for an old debt. The day's fluid, settled before the day is done. The waking at 2 in the morning feels like a malfunction. The body failing, the bladder betraying you, age closing in. It is none of those. It is bookkeeping. Through the day, gravity quietly moves fluid into your legs and parks it there, and the bill for that fluid does not disappear. It waits. Lie down, and the body begins to pay it back. The legs empty, the heart signals, the kidneys process, and the only question is what time the payment is scheduled for. Left alone, on a still day, it is scheduled for the middle of your sleep, because that is simply how the hours of redistribution and processing fall after an 11 o'clock bedtime. But the schedule is not fixed by age or by fate. It is fixed by when the fluid was allowed to move. Keep the legs working through the day, and there is little to redistribute at all. Lie down on purpose in the early evening, and the redistribution happens while you are awake to handle it. Either way, you are not fighting the physics. You are choosing the hour. The body keeps faithful accounts, and it will always collect what the day deposited. It only asks, in the end, that you decide whether to settle up at 8 in the evening, on your feet, in a moment, or at 2 in the morning, in the dark, on the long, uncertain walk that the night would otherwise choose for you.